The European and African heads of state and governments have arrived in the Belgium capital, Brussels, for the two-day EU-Africa summit.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to participate in the climate and COVID-19 sessions. The president was appointed as AU envoy for COVID-19 to ensure Africa developed a strategy to fight the pandemic and get access to vaccines.
Now, trade and investment is also on the cards. It comes as Europe focuses on the Ukraine crisis. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor says this will not derail the gathering.
Are European countries still hoarding vaccines?
No, they have been giving vaccines, but we now need to move to the TRIPS dispensation where we can make our own vaccines, and that to us is very important.
You're not convinced by the European offer so far?
No, not yet.
Mr. President, when the US talk about new partnership with Africa, what do you think about what means the new partnership according to you?
Well, it means mutual respect, mutual recognition of what we can all bring to the party. Investment in our economies, infrastructure investment, and in many ways for former colonizers to give back to the continent.
Thank you so much.
Let's stay with this, and we're now joined by our correspondent, Rosie Bichard, in Brussels. We now, of course, speak to her about this particular summit. Rosie, Bongiwe here. Thank you so much for your time. Can you take us through the business of the summit today?
Absolutely. So this is a really important day in Brussels, an important day for relations between Europe and Africa. The last couple of days, and particularly today, the city has just been awash with sirens and whistles and cars with tinted windows because the heads of state have been arriving. Certainly in the time that I've been reporting in Brussels for several years, I've never seen such a concentration of power in one place. So we have the 27 EU heads of state and around 40 African leaders. So leaders arrived this afternoon. President Ramaphosa was among the last to arrive, and as we heard, he made some pretty strong comments on the way in. They then went into opening ceremony, and after that there were thematic round tables. Interestingly enough, the last time we had this summit was back in the Ivory Coast in 2017. They've tried to change the format since then to go to a round table format, so several leaders together trying to put their heads together on one topic as opposed to one big plenary where everyone sits and listens. That's because organisers think that will bear more results. Now, what comes up next is a dinner. So the leaders will be wined and dined in a Belgian museum here in Brussels. And we understand President Ramaphosa is also to be holding bilateral meetings shortly with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
And one of the things that, is clear even from his answer when you listen to some of those questions, he talks about mutual respect. And yesterday he said the summit is likely to come up with resolutions that will benefit both Africa and the European countries. Do you get a sense that that is what is going to happen?
Yes, absolutely. So for the European Union side, the kind of jewel in the crown of this summit will be pointing African countries toward a new pot of infrastructure investment funds that go to around 150 billion euros. The EU calls that its Global Gateway Initiative. Now, interestingly enough, that is widely seen as a bid to rival China's influence on the African continent. Now, where we might see some differences between the EU and the AU side is when it comes to what those infrastructure funds can actually be used for. So the European Union is really trying to beef up its climate credentials. It has big ambitions to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050, carbon neutral, by 2050. But we heard from Macky Sall, the president of Senegal, on the way in. He's really trying to push instead for these funds to be available for transitional fuels, so not just for clean energy or renewables like solar power. He says those transitional fuels, for example, gas, really need to fall into that. So we do see some divergences on those points, but the EU will definitely be trying to score some points here and showing that it is ready to invest massively in the African continent.
And it's going to be interesting to see what the outcomes then become there, but also France and the West African regional leaders met on the margins of the summit. Of course, this was to discuss the Sahel region. Can you share with us what came out of that particular meeting?
Absolutely. So President Macron tried to use this opportunity of having so many African leaders in town to take a next step when it comes to those relations between France and Mali. France, of course, a former colonial power in Mali, and those relations have really turned sour of late. France intervened militarily in Mali back in 2013. It's been a bumpy ride, but things have really spiraled downward over the past few weeks. Originally, we heard from the Economic Community of West African States that it slapped sanctions on Mali. The European Union then followed suit, and that was really to do with a failure of the transitional authorities, the EU, and says to organise elections. Now, Mali then expelled France's ambassador to the country, so things definitely turning sour. However, what France announced, the announcement we had from France today is that it would be drawing down its troops in Mali, so that counterinsurgency mission operation that has been in place for almost 10 years. So France is really trying to say this is not a failure, but critics will of course say that after 10 years drawing down will be seen as France failing to kind of come on its commitments there. France says it is not abandoning the Sahel region, and one question mark which really remains is the future of EU military training missions in Mali, which so far continue despite several members of the Malian transitional authorities, including its prime minister, being under EU sanctions. So that means their assets in the EU are frozen, and they are subject to travel bans.
All right, lots of questions on that front and very little answers. But thank you so much. We'll leave it there for now. That's Rosie Bichard in Brussels for us.